Thanks for downloading this episode of Cork Talk with me, Tim Atkin. A weekly conversation with some of the most famous people in the world of wine.
This podcast is brought to you in partnership with Noma Cork by Vinventions. Driven by a commitment to innovation, the new plant-based Noma Cork Green Line offers significant improvements in wine closure performance. Thanks to a rigorous oxygen ingress rate, you can decide which cork is best for your wine, whether it's for young and fresh wines or for those with ageing potential.
Olly Smith is one of the UK's most engaging wine experts, known for his appearances on Saturday Kitchen, his newspaper columns, his celebrity podcast, and his books, as well as his sense of humour and love of words. I caught up with him from his house in Lewes to talk about his favourite films, his collection of English sparkling wines, his love of all things Greek, and the friendship he developed with the late Sir Roger Moore. Hello, Olly, and how are you?
Tim, I'm thriving, and I'm so happy to be here with you doing this. I mean, wine and good friends, there's nothing better, right?
There is nothing better than that, and you always bring a smile to my face. You're always Mr. Jolly.
Well, likewise. And I think throughout our relationship and our friendship, that's one of the things I've always sort of loved about knowing you is you don't just inspire me about wine, you inspire me about so many other things like movies and music and theatre and books. And our worlds collide in the most magnificent way as a result. So hurrah.
And we both love Sexy Beast, our favourite film.
Well, we've got to get straight into it. I mean, it is one of the greatest films ever made. I mean, it's a terrifying film. It's a hilarious film, but it's a film that always makes me feel like I'm tingling on edge. I never quite, I mean, I know I've seen it a million times, but I never know how it's going to end, even though I do know. I feel that I don't.
Listen, where are you at the moment? You're at home, aren't you? Lewes?
I'm at home. I'm in my pod just near Lewes in East Sussex, which has, of course, become a bit of a hub for the world of wine. When I moved down here in 2000, there was a Breaky Bottom, there was Ridgeview, Night Timber down the road. I mean, now there's just an extraordinary number of vineyards. Nothing to do with me, of course, but delighted to see it happening.
They're following you.
Well, I mean, it's a thought, isn't it? Maybe they're swarming around something that I've left, something unfortunate. But no, it's really wonderful to have that in the neighbourhood. And honestly, it's taken off in a way that I never thought that it would this quickly. I always believed in it, and I've been collecting English wine seriously since the year 2000, especially the fizz. But to see it happen so rapidly and gain such plaudits is just super gratifying. So hats off to everyone who's doing it.
No, exactly. I mean, I often ask people about where they came from, and it's just fun to know. Because where were you born and brought up? I mean, you weren't born and brought up in Lewes, were you?
No, that's true. I came down to Sussex because I met and fell in love with Sophie at school during my A-levels, and she was a Brighton girl. But before that, I was, people will never believe this with my accent. However, I was born in County Durham in Darlington. Yeah, I know. So me and Jim Moyer, Vic Reeves, both sons of Darlow, very proud of that. Mum and Dad were working there at the time. Mum was a nurse, Dad was a teacher. And we lived in Eggleston and then Witten Le Weir. And I absolutely loved living there. But we got shipped out quite early in my childhood. Mum and Dad both got jobs and were shipped as essential employees to the island of Jersey in the Channel Islands. So far from the sort of millionaire's villa of Bergerac, we were, living, it was a comfortable life, but everybody automatically assumes that there I was with a yacht and a tricorn hat and knee-high boots with a musket.
Not a bit of it.
No, not at all. It was just a very regular kind of living on a little estate upbringing, and it was charming. I'm not going to run away from that. Living by the beach in Jersey was brilliant.
Nice. And I know your parents love wine now, but were they drinking wine then, or have they kind of got into it because of you in a way?
Well, that's a brilliant question. They totally got into it at the same time as me. So I went to school. I actually went to a boarding school. I was a chorister at King's College, Cambridge. I won a music scholarship there, and then won another music scholarship to Charterhouse, playing the French horn and so forth. But during the holidays in Jersey, my job was in Orange and Company Vintners, and that was how I sort of met wine and fell in love with wine. And Mum and Dad had never really seriously been into it beforehand, but it sort of coincided with the time that wine hit the supermarket. So all my friends thought I was really odd working in a wine shop and being completely obsessed by it. But I mean, now, of course, they love it. And Mum and Dad, I mean, they've gone from being, the occasional bottle of Santa Emilion at Easter time, which is what they used to do, to, I think they are probably Majestic's most loyal customers of all time.
But competing with my dad.
Yeah, really? See a Majestic
well, they can see him coming. Yeah, he's a huge Majestic.
They love it, don't they? I mean, I think it's partly because they look at all the team, as they go in the store and think that they're probably related to them in some way. They sort of of look at them and think of they're sort of similar age to their kids. They love the banter, and I think they love the wine society as well, of course. And, they live down in Devon. So again, they're quite into Yurlston, the local vineyard there, but there's nothing really they won't taste. And that's what I really love about Mum and Dad.
Yeah, that's good. They're open to new wines, right? And experiences.
Well, this is it. And after you and I went to South Africa all those years ago on a highly memorable trip, I ended up taking Dad as a kind of, just a bit of a kind of the two of us going out. And I'm really glad we did it because he subsequently lost his sight and is not able to travel very much. But I've got such happy memories of visiting tremendous wineries. He loves golf. I'm useless. I barely get loft on the ball. So I was basically playing snooker while he was playing golf in these places, like Kleinerszeltzer. But I took him to Molineux when they moved to the Swartland, when they moved to Rabique's Castile. And my dad, and because they'd just moved there, my dad helped them hang the sign on the front of the winery. So I love memories like that. It's the nicest thing in the world.
That's what wine is made of, isn't it?
Well, totally.
Just tell us about the music stuff, because I thought I knew you very well. I didn't know that you were a King's College choral scholar. Then you took up the French horn, and then you got a top music scholarship to Charterhouse, as you mentioned, where you met your wife Sophie. Are you still? I mean, you're pretty musical. Do you still, do you sing in the shower?
I relentlessly sing in the shower. I do, and I sing all the time if I can. And my children regularly tell me to shut up. I think I'm an excruciating parent in many regards, but probably the non-stop singing. I mean, I do love music. I listen to music constantly. So if you were to, find one area of life that I would always be happy to discuss aside from wine, music would be absolutely up there. Live gigs. I'm seeing John Cale tonight at the Delaware Pavilion. Can't wait. Yeah, and I actually, weirdly, there are a lot of bands, younger bands like Flight and Billy Martin is another one, who really like wine and get in touch, and we kind of go on these kind of music wine adventures. So there's definitely synergy. But as for the French horn, funnily enough, Tim, I haven't played for years, and I'm determined to pick up a French horn again, partly, if anything, to just, reverse the effects of gravity on my face. It's looking like a landslide at the moment. I need some
get the old lips moving.
Get the lips moving, yeah. But no, the piano I play a lot, and I learned the organ. I love playing the guitar, and I've even released a single which you can find on Spotify and iTunes called Snow on the Borderline. It was a challenge.
Not Smoke on the Water, but Snow on the Borderline.
No, but what a great double bill that would be.
I'm going to listen to that. I can't wait.
It was a challenge during lockdown, actually. I can't remember who asked me to do it, but I did it anyway. I released a single. Of course, it didn't get to number one. Yeah. There we are.
I mean, your other great love is words. Obviously, you're an amazing wordsmith, and you went to Edinburgh University, you studied English literature. Is that when you really fell in love with language, or as a kid were you always, you love kind of puns and word games and all that kind of stuff, and,
I do.
And metaphors? Was that something you grew up with from your parents or something?
Well, Mum and Dad were just really kind to me and my brother Will, and I think growing up they gave us a lot of space to express ourselves, and we were very much into comedy, and Laurel and Hardy in particular. We used to write a lot of kind of little plays and skits, and we were both really into books. I mean, he was always a bit more highbrow than me. I was kind of more into the comics and Asterix, and he was very much a Tintin man. And these days we've coincided to a degree, but I did fall in love with literature early at school, and then I did English A-level, which was my favourite subject, and I did English at Edinburgh University, as you said, with a little bit of history of art and Scots Lit as well. But it was an MA that I loved. And actually at Edinburgh, in addition to my job at Orange and Company Vintners in the holidays, my job during term time was working at the Cameo Cinema. So really the kind of the worlds that I inhabited of words, the screen, wine, they were always the things that fascinated me. Yeah. I find it amazing that I've managed to kind of, in some departments of life, bring them all together, which is
get people to pay you to do it. Amazing. Well, that's what I feel as well. Same thing.
Yeah, and I know you're such an advocate of like doing what you love, and I just think we're so fortunate in so many regards. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's hard work at times, but I absolutely love every second of it.
Yeah, I mean, you've always had that slightly surreal, absurdist side to your humour, which I like. I mean, it was, and your brother was a stand-up for a while, wasn't he? I mean, did you ever think about doing that? Did you ever think, I might have a go at this?
Yes.
And you, Vic Reeves.
I loved, Jim's great. I did do a bit of stand-up. I actually was the runner-up in the BBC's open mic competition. And it ended up with me playing at the Glastonbury Festival with Julian Barrett, who obviously went on to great things with the Mighty Boosh. And I remember, I can't have been that good because I had my guitar and I did my funny little skit as the runner-up. And one of my flatmates from Edinburgh University, who I will name and shame, James Wood, I know you're out there if you're listening to this, he was in the crowd with his now wife Tori, and didn't even notice I was on stage. So I walked off stage and went, "Oh my gosh, there's my flatmate." Walked up to him and went, "Hi Jim, how you doing?" And he said, "Oh great, what have you been doing?" I said, "Mate, I've just been on stage. I've just been doing a gig." He hadn't even noticed, so I didn't make a huge impression. But I thought, to be honest, the thing about stand-up, it's a wonderful discipline, and I really respect people who do it. But I think for me, it was a staging post onto finding ways to engage and to communicate. And as for my brother, he was a stand-up for years, actually, and is now an exec producer and a showrunner for Apple on a show called Slow Horses. So he still loves comedy, and that's very much his world. But he's also now just an extraordinary, I guess, I don't know what you call him, broadcaster. Just he's a mind. I'll just call him a mind. He is a mind.
What did you do post uni? Were you writing scripts for a bit?
Yes, I did. I had a really sort of strange segue into wine. I left uni and met somebody who I had an idea for an animation show with, which the BBC showed a sniff of interest in, and we were really hard at it, and we kept going for about a year. And the spec script we came up with got noticed by quite a few people. So I ended up writing I was head writer actually on Pingu for 3 series. Who, of course, notoriously speaks in gobbledygook, which is a reflection on my writing skills. But you had to write everything in the script, like where he was, what he was doing, who's he interacting with, what's going on. So that was silent comedy, effectively. And then a bit of work with Charlie and Lola, Wallace and Gromit for one day on The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. And then along came my opportunity in wine, which... was kind of partly down to another writer actually called Mark Huckabee, who was, I'd been doing writing for a few years, and he kept taking me to one side. He's still a dear friend. He kept taking me to one side and saying, "Look, Ollie, you're all right at screenwriting, but really all you talk about is wine. And I really think you should seriously consider trying to do that, because I think you'll enjoy it more, but also you seem to be just happy when you're doing it." Yeah. And then along came the notorious competition.
This is Wine Idol, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not Pop Idol, but Wine Idol. And it only happened once, didn't it?
Yeah, I think I'm the only holder of Wine Idol. I don't know if they got in trouble with the owners of Pop Idol, but yeah, sponsored by Hardee's, and it was a sort of they were looking for somebody to go and appear on Great Food Live. So the prize was actually an audition to go on Great Food Live. You didn't get a slot. Yeah. So I think it was about 6,000 people downloaded the application form, and we had to do writing, we had to film ourselves, we had to present live, we had to do blind tastings. And I remember getting down to the last 3. And I think the wine I did, I think there was a mispour, because it was supposed to be a Cabernet Sauvignon, but I'd identified as Shiraz, and then they were sort of dismissing me from the competition. And then they realised the researcher had actually poured the Shiraz. Yeah, they poured the wrong wine. So, and I was really kind of sticking by my gun, saying, "But this is incredibly smoky. This is definitely Shiraz." And I think that was what probably carried me on the day. But a wonderful chance that I then really kind of used to try to get a break. So the audition, I actually went for that audition, Tim, and I remember the producer, lovely Juliet, she was so not impressed. She said, "I saw you at the Wine Idol thing. You're very theatrical and flamboyant, but you're not TV." And I was really quite downhearted before I went and did the audition, and then I did it in the studio. And to her credit, Juliet Leith, she came down and said, "You know what, I stand corrected. I really enjoyed that. Would you like the chance to come on the show?" And she became, again, a great mentor and friend over the years. But
and how did the connection with Saturday Kitchen happen? Because you're still on there a lot, aren't you?
I know, yeah, it's still there. Amanda Ross, who at the time found me and sort of auditioned me for the Rich and Judy book club, wine club, sorry, even I'd be something else on the book club. And I think she went through hundreds of people. She was looking and looking and looking, and eventually she basically discovered me and gave me my opportunity. And then that was how Saturday Kitchen came along, and that's been obviously a very regular thing in my life for many years now. But I think the lovely thing about it is that it reaches so many people, and it's an opportunity to sort of guide people through the world of wine, through the world of supermarket wine, and ideally, to encourage them to taste what they really would like, but then hopefully to find other experts and find regions beyond and outlets beyond the ones we use and spread their wine wings. So I've always seen it as a great platform to advocate for wine in the first place, as opposed to other drinks, which I do also love.
I'm going to ask you about those.
Yeah, do. Yeah.
But tell me first, I just wonder how the show's changed over the years. Do you think it's changed? I mean,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's the diversity is fantastic now. We're getting a lot more younger people. There seems to be a kind of a wider pool as well of talent, I think, coming on the show. And I think instinctively it feels like we're giving people more of a chance. People who maybe haven't got a profile, but if they're fantastic, they can come on the show. We had a wonderful guy last week, Henry, he'd invented the Yorkshire pudding wrap. Not a song, but literally a burrito that you fill with
WRAP.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a brilliant idea, and he was a great entrepreneur, and really cool, and never been on telly, and he did a great job. And I think that sort of thing can be lovely. But as far as wine goes, I think it's broadened beyond just wine, which is nice to see as well. So we can offer a bit of cider, a bit of beer, and of course that brings the average spend down as well, because those units tend to be a bit less pricey in terms of the single unit spend. So yeah, from that point of view, and cocktails as well. So it's definitely moved with the times. And the thing I love most is just the extraordinary nature of those dishes, Tim. Because now I'm in the studio, I get to taste them, which is amazing.
With some amazing chefs, right?
Well, yeah, I can hand on heart say they genuinely knock it out of the park. And one thing I will say is that Matt, in the middle of the show, always has this segment where he does an interview, and that whoever it is, Robson Green, or it might be, it could be anybody, but he prepares a dish in real time in about 6 or 7 minutes. And it is always super easy to cook and so delicious. And those are the recipes I would really recommend listeners to go and look up on the BBC's website and have a go at. Of course, the other chefs are fantastic, but if you want something quick and easy for a midweek dinner or a midweek lunch, those are the ones.
Which we all do, right? I mean,
basically, we're all up for it, aren't we?
Yeah, and something you can do in 15 minutes is not too much of your time, basically, is it?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, you're also newspaper columnist, one of the few left these days. Yeah, you're on telly, as we've heard. You've written 6 books. I just wonder, how do you describe yourself?
That is a really difficult one. So genuinely, I like to think, the way I look at myself is I'm in training to be hopefully a really good grandfather if my children ever have children. I kind of think if I can, assemble enough life skills to just be entertaining enough for, and if I'm lucky enough to have grandchildren, that genuinely is how I kind of think of myself. I always kind of, I do, and as far as work goes, I just never know quite where the next thing will come from. I think if I can, I'd like to be an advocate for other people and other things. I think, what I like to do is to shine a light on another flavour, another place, another grape, another ability. I'm quite reticent, to be honest. I think people always assume I'm sort of going to be larger than life and, want to hog the limelight. And actually, I have quite a complicated relationship with that. And I find it's more easy if I can talk about somebody else. I'm not that, interested in necessarily, trying to talk about, or be there for another reason, if you see what I mean. Does that at all make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. Yeah. No, I think it does. I mean, which bit of your job gives you most pleasure? Because there's so many facets to it, aren't there?
Well, to be really honest, I really like the speaking. I love this kind of thing. I really do. I just think this is, when you're kind of in the moment, you're with another person, ideally, over a glass of wine. Those are the moments when you kind of go mind flying together. You sort of surf the universe, and we've done that. We've hung out, and I adore that. I never know where the conversation's going. I'm really happy to learn. I'm very keen to spend as much time in good company as I possibly can. So I think probably this kind of thing, podcasting. I loved it when I did Radio 2. I managed to sit in for Claire Balding for a few years, and then I got my own show on Radio 2 for a while, and I really enjoyed that. And I love any kind of podcasting. It's great. Yeah, chat. Yeah. I love that chat.
I know I like the stuff we do together, with 3 Wine Men, with our dear friend Oz Clark. I think the 3 of us always have fun. And, that's always been the premise of it, hasn't it? Just that we enjoy each other's company. We enjoy the same sorts of wines most of the time. Oz, sometimes we never know, do we? But,
well, where is he?
Where is he? The eternal question. Where is he? But,
totally.
It's fun. And I think we come at wine from a, we've all got different tastes and things, but we come at it from the same place, the same angle, which is that we think it should be fun. It should be more accessible. We're not wine snobs. We don't only drink first growth clarets. We're open to everything, right? Well, almost everything.
100% agree. Yeah, almost everything. Well, you remember Vigna Pomal? You remember that wonderful day? Like, honestly, if you're wondering what it's like for us doing the show, Tim and I find wines that we love, and then we enjoy them. Yeah. Guess what? We actually really do have a glass after
drinking them.
We do, and I think that's really key as well, because we are in a time when, of course, we have to be responsible and bear all that in mind. Also, though, the cadence and the feeling that wine gives is something that's been celebrated throughout human history, and I'm a massive fan of the way Horace speaks about wine, and it's something to to delve a little more deeply into the liminal spaces of life.
I think
Just
so.
give yourself that space. And Oz, you and me, I think we all agree on that. And we all have our different characters, of course, but yeah, we do love each other. And ultimately, I love those shows. Of course, I like doing the shows themselves, but I really like hanging out with you.
We get to hang out, yeah.
And with Oz, and that's just a treat.
Yeah. Someone interviewed me for a newspaper in Spain this week when I was in Barcelona at the wine week. And he said, what do you like most about wine? And I said, well, obviously the flavour and the history and all this stuff. And I said, and do you know what? I actually quite enjoy mild intoxication. Yeah, I'm not being drunk, but I like the fact that wine makes you happy. I'm an alcohol. I know there are lots of depressors who drink alcohol, but for me, it's a source of joy and fun and mild intoxication. And I hesitate, so I underline the word mild. Yeah. I think it's part of it, do you?
Well, I think that sense of feeling connected with the moment is huge, and therefore wine, I think, the way I'd come at that is the mild part is important because it allows you to then engage with the conversation,
yes,
or with the music or the food or whatever. Wine is really part of a bigger scene, and that I think is why it's so cool, because it is a lighthouse. It's a cultural kind of touchstone. It's a compass to the next great thing.
I love it. A compass to the next great thing.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm going to steal that. No, I'm not. Really.
Do.
I want to ask you a bit more about TV because there's always been a bit frustrating for me. There's never been a great series about wine on mainstream TV. Is it just too complex for the medium, or have we not found the right formula? I'm sure you've tried. We've all tried. But
we have.
Why has it not worked?
I think there's one. There are shows that have come close. I would point at Oz and James as the popularity of that show.
That was the closest, but it was a crossover almost, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was lifestyle-y, and it was buddy, and it was odd couple-y, and that was successful, very much in the vein of Sideways, which again, is a really good approach. I think. I think it is a tough one. Visually, wine tends to look similar, so that's something. But of course, you and I would immediately jump in and say, but it's surrounded by all these different vistas. There's different land. There's different people, stories, different cultures, traditions. And I think it is doable. And I think the broadcasters that I've spoken to tend to be of the opinion that wine is too niche. That's the thing I've come up against time and time again. I think that's catastrophically wrong, because I think wine is something enjoyed by a huge number of people.
Well, more people drink wine in the UK than beer now, right?
Well, right. And now we've got so many celebrity wines. Kylie is, I think, the best-selling wine in the UK. Gary Barlow's the best-selling organic wine. Yeah. I just don't think it stands up that it's niche, because this is clearly a mainstream part of people's lives that they're very interested in. And I think probably the way to do it is to try to connect it a little bit, maybe with a bit of celebrity. That can never harm. But I definitely think setting it in different ways. There was that US show, wasn't there, when they tried to do a kind of a almost like a competitive reality show about winning a vineyard. I forget the name of it. It's not a terrible idea, but I think given that there's so much talent in the UK now, even from a farming point of view, just a regular strand on Country File or where it would be, I think wine can work in all sorts of different ways on telly. So the battle continues.
Yeah, the battle continues. Tell me a bit about celebrities, because you've had your own celebrity-ish, I suppose, podcast with him, A Glass With, and you've interviewed Kylie Minogue. Lucky man, I'd love to get Kylie Minogue. Anyway, but you've had Sting on there, and Pink, and Sam Neill, and Sir Michael Parkinson. But who was the most fun to interview at that long?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. I love Dawn French, and she was amazing, and actually amazing in the kind of podcast, because she's not massively into wine, but she crossed the bridge and was prepared to go there, and really did get very interested in wine, to the point where she asked me out for a curry afterwards with her husband, which was fantastic, and I had a brilliant time. So yes, wine led to a nice friendship there. So I think Dawn would be my I've always got a soft spot for Dawn French. But I suppose there are people that have kind of got away. There's definitely somebody I've got in mind who I will never be able to interview on the podcast, who I would have loved to have.
Well, tell me about him in a minute. I want to ask you, who was the most daunting? Was Sting a bit daunting?
Well, Sting was a bit daunting, because I went to Sting's house with Trudy, and it was a joint interview, and we were in Italy. This is a you pinch yourself moment. You're sitting in Sting's house, and his dogs are roaming around, and you're in his living room, and you very nearly spill a bottle of wine over a priceless book about the Beatles, but we don't talk about that. But yeah, one of the things I think they were a little bit worried initially that I was sort of there to talk about wine in a highbrow way or catch them out in some way. And about 10 minutes in, you can still hear it. Everybody's shoulders drop. And I think it's the bit where Sting, I think I asked him about why he bought that particular house and vineyard, was it for the view and everything? He's like, no, I bought it because there's a lake there and I like swimming in the nude. And you just think, right, that'll do.
Well, that's all right. That's a good
fine. So he was quite daunting, but in the end, not. And in the end, very sweetly, again, he and Trudy invited my family, who was staying locally, to a pizza evening that night that they were hosting to the people who work in the vineyard. And we had an absolute blast. Although my kids, hilariously, when he walked in, said, I don't recognise him, but I do recognise her. And of course, they recognised Judy Styler because she'd been in Friends. She, Phoebe tries to make friends with her, I think, in one episode. But that was pretty magical.
Well, and who did you never have on the show who you'd like to have had on the show?
Well, that's definitely the one that got away is Sir Roger Moore, who is no longer with us, sadly, and I miss greatly because bizarrely, Tim, he ended up becoming a friend of mine and me of him in his later years, and actually, we got to know each other through an animation I was working on, but he was sort of my hero because he was Bond and the Persuaders and the Saints. And actually, when I met him and he spoke about his work for UNICEF and what he wanted to do for people with HIV around the world and girls having an education in Afghanistan and trying to help with iodine and goiter, I immediately realized he was absolutely my hero, but for completely different reasons.
So he used his celebrity for good causes,
and I think that's exactly the right thing to do. And he was a spectacular human being and an extremely generous, warm, and thoughtful, reflective person. And he liked wine, which was really charming. So his favourite wine was Sancerre, and he was telling me about how he and Michael Caine and Leslie Bricusse would go off to the Loire Valley, going on these wine tours, packing the back of the car. Can you imagine being a fly on the wall? Now that is a wine TV show you want to see.
It certainly is. I mean,
can you imagine?
Alive.
Yeah.
Exactly. Tell me, you've mentioned this already, but you're interested in other drinks, beer, cocktails. Do you think being interested in other drinks give you a slightly different perspective on wine?
I think that's probably true. Yes, I think flavour-wise, it's quite interesting to get a reference to see what's hot and what's trendy. I remember when hops became hugely popular in beer, and I realised that there was kind of a correlation between the passion fruit nature of Sauvignon Blanc and these tropical surges that were coming in beers. But then beers moved into this kind of almost a hop Armageddon race, see how hoppy they could become. So that was quite interesting because with wine, I think we're always after proportion and balance and all these things that are important to us. And in other drinks, I'm not saying they go to excess, but they can be very creative. And of course, they can make a different brew every day. Yeah. You can make a gin, to your specification. So I definitely think it does.
And you can add botanicals or hops in the case of beer. And there's
and then there are lovely crossovers like the world of cognac, which I think is fascinating, and that obviously is a huge link with the world of wine being made from grapes. But yes, I do love other drinks and cocktails, obviously, in particular. I've just written a book, the Home Cocktail Bible. Yeah, and I've got another one coming in the autumn. I'm not sure I'm allowed to reveal the title yet, but I've just finished the shoot and I've delivered it. So yeah, it's in the bag. It's done.
But is it still wine that excites you most?
Definitely it's wine that excites me most because that's I think culturally it's just such a window into other people's countries, lives, lifestyles, foods, traditions, and the future. That's the most important part of all. We're facing interesting questions about climate change and sustainability. And, I love the work, for example, that Playmont Vigneron are doing in Sud-West France. They're fantastic at kind of teasing out varieties that might be useful in that particular area. I think of Assyrtiko and Santorini. It's very drought resistant. So there's lots of interesting conversation to be had. Touriga in Bordeaux, Touriga Nacional, there we have it.
Which is fantastic, isn't it?
It's amazing. I think it's great. More power to their elbow.
Might end up being better than Merlot, not hard.
Yeah. I love it.
Tell me something. You've always been a big fan, you mentioned this, of English food and drink, and when you moved to Lewes, there wasn't that much of an English wine scene, but there is now.
Yeah.
But what do we do best? Do you think it's sparkling wine as a country?
Well, I think that's high. I definitely do. But I buy quite a lot of Bacchus. I really love it. And I think it can be nuanced. I think it can be interesting. I like Ulrich Hochmann a great deal at Hoffman and Rathbone. His use of acacia wood and eggs and all sorts to, in the ferment, he manages to get texture. He manages to make it feel like it's got elegance. It's not overblown. And his wines, I think, age really well. I've got a little library going now, and I think that they're quite intriguing. So I think when it's treated right, Bacchus could actually be a real contender. I think, to be honest, I think with English wine, it's too early to say, is the honest truth. And I feel, we've got our PDO in Sussex, and I suppose that's useful in some regards, and some might say not in others. But I do think it's too early to really nail what we're going to do,
especially with climate change, right?
Well, yeah, because I and also I don't think we've had any time to really get to know the sites. But what I will say is that the sites we already have are flipping amazing. Yeah. When you think, this is in its infancy. It's so exciting.
Essex is the future.
Yeah, Crouch Valley. Yes, absolutely. Oh, yes. And Flint up in Norfolk.
Yeah.
You've got Camel down in Cornwall. We've got you can't do a podcast without saying thanks to the Lindos.
There we go. We got the Lindos in. I hope they're listening.
Yes,
Bob and Sam. Hope you're listening.
We love them. Yes.
I mean, one of the things I love, and you told me about this, you were UK ambassador for the Food is Great campaign. You visited China, didn't you? Now, you had to work with a certain politician who went on briefly to greater things, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, could you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so Liz Truss was with us. She was I think the trade minister at the time. I think I'll jump over that and give you a kind of a response to when she became prime minister, which neatly encapsulates my opinion of her. I am not a gambling man, Tim. I very rarely bet, but I put down a bet of I can't remember how much it was, maybe £25, that she and Kwasi Kwarteng would both fall before Christmas. And everybody thought I was crazy. And I won a good amount of money, which I gave to charity. But I had absolutely zero faith in her. And I was really, to be honest, distressed, despondent, concerned, alarmed when I heard that she was going to be our prime minister. I just hope for better times is all I can say. I think
we all do.
I love people, and I think we deserve to love each other and be loved by the people who lead us as much as we should love them.
Yeah, and live in a country run by people with values,
people who genuinely care and people who have some skin in the game. Yeah. Let's put it like that. And I think a lot of people are playing with things as though they're a toy. This is not a toy. This is our lives, and it's high time that responsibility was taken. So. Yeah, I hope for better times. Bit of a serious moment there, but
exactly. Let's move back onto wine.
Yes, I love wine.
I mean, favourite wine regions and countries, apart from England, you mentioned that. Yeah. You've always had this thing with Greece, haven't you? I mean, and you were kind of ahead of the curve there. I don't know, was it a holiday there or something? Or did you just fall in love with the Sertico or what?
Well, it was both those things. So I first went to Greece when I was 18 on holiday with Sophie, and we were camping for 3 weeks. And I realised then that there was some really inexpensive boutique production of quite interesting wines that I simply didn't recognise the flavours of. So I fell completely in love. And actually, even, I know Retsina isn't the greatest wine in the world, but when it's done right, it can be intriguing. And as a food pairing with things like, very garlicky flavors like scordalia, for example, it really can work, and it needs intense flavors. But yes, I became intrigued by the regionality of Greece. And actually, one of the first pieces I ever wrote, Graham Halter very sweetly gave me my first job in writing for the Wine and Spirit magazine, I think it was called. And one of the first pieces I wrote was called Greece is Cool, about cool climate Greece, high altitude stuff in Crete, Vidiano, and all these wonderful white grape varieties that were producing wines of finesse and poise. And to be honest, I don't think people took it that seriously. And I still stand by that because, I love the islands of Greece. I love the rivers, the lakes, the mountains. I love the regionality of it and the grape varieties, Xinomavro and Asidco and Malagousia and all of these. They're great. But high altitude Greece has just not been touched yet. And I think we're going to see some of that coming.
More to come.
Loads more to come. And I think, Cyprus, the Troodos Mountains, Sinisteri is great with the highest vineyards in Europe. So, or one of them, I think there might be some talk from some of the islands out in the Atlantic about this, but I'll leave them to have their tussle. But I'm a massive fan of Greece. I totally think that they're having their moment. And again, lots of organic boutique production can't be a bad thing for the world.
And where else? Anywhere else?
Yeah,
where do you feel at home when you travel? I mean, you travel quite a bit, don't you?
I
mean,
do.
you're off on cruise ships all the time. But
yeah, I do. Yes, I that's a really good question. I mean, I like you, I love Spain. I always feel very relaxed in Spain. France has always held intrigue. I am fascinated by the wines of Germany. I mean, South America. It's really hard to pick one. But if I don't know. It's really it's a really hard one because I'm like you. I'm really interested by everything I taste. I'd probably be somewhere in Europe, somewhere that I don't know very well. Even if it's a corner of the Languedoc doing something a bit
amazing
bonkers.
place.
Roussillon with those old vines. I mean, it's extraordinary what's on our doorstep. And actually you think about the Loire, Muscadet. It's amazing.
I know. Nobody knows it. But
I know.
And what about the stuff you drink? I mean, do you have a cellar at home?
Yes, I do.
And what's in it? What's in it? Can you open the door for us?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I own my Fizz collection pretty much is 100% English, and there's a lot of bottles there. But it's a library that I'm I'm intrigued by. I'd buy a little bit of kind of, Bordeaux of the level of Chateau Meiny, that sort of thing, that's affordable and within reach. I know you and I really like Grand Prix Lacoste as well. I think we share a similar taste. I buy quite a bit of Spain, Portugal. There's a lot of Greece. That's probably the biggest section. Australia. I love Syrah. I love Victoria. I love Jaden Ong. I mean, his wines are really, I buy a lot of his stuff. I mean, Mac Forbes I buy a bit of
Mac Forbes,
as well. Love the Forbes. World's most handsome man apart from anything else. Bit of Kiwi stuff. A lot of Tokai. Of Tokai. Not much America, not much North America, to be honest. A bit
South
of Argentina.
America?
Yeah, I've got a lot of Chile, a little bit of Argentina.
South
I saw
Africa?
you been to Uruguay.
South Africa?
Yes, I've got some old TMV stuff that Chris and Andrea Mullen.
Oh, I have as well. We should compare.
Let's have a tasting.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, I do a lot. So, and actually I found a good Cape Point Semi on the other day, a really old one that Duncan Savage had made. And I thought, I'd totally forgotten I had it. So, a bit of fortified. I've kind of got, not much Burgundy actually. Although I'm putting that right, I'm finding my way slowly but surely into the world of Burgundy. Trying to buy smart by following recommendations from people like yourself. That's the best way in.
I think the difficult thing with Burgundy now is that the top stuff has got so ludicrously expensive. That it makes me want to go to places like Greece and Spain, where and drink Garnacha from Gredos Rioja, whatever.
And Portugal,
which have Burgundy like qualities in a sense, even though they're different grape varieties.
Completely agree. Yeah.
I want to go back to celebrities for a second, because you were on Celebrity Mastermind. You're a bit of a celebrity yourself, aren't you? What was your specialist subject?
It was Withnail and I. So I thought, I was there as a patron of the Drinks Trust, so I had a drinks charity. I thought I better have a drinks, bit of content. And Withnail, and I remember...
Can you do the tea shop speech?
Yeah, we've got the finest wines available to humanity. We want them here, we want them now. It was great. Miss Blanner
You're drunk.
Call the police. Yeah. Well, it's nonsense. Your cake and fine wine. It's an amazing film it's a film of great tenderness. And actually, I will say, if you're a fan of Withnail, there's a current movie I'd recommend called Brian and Charles, which is similarly whimsical about an inventor in the wilds of Wales who creates a robot to keep him company, and together they overthrow a bully, and it's wonderful. But yeah, Withnail was my
What's that on?
subject.
Where can you watch that? Is it
you can
Netflix
watch that on Amazon Prime. It's on
I'm going to watch that.
Yeah.
Might watch that tonight. Brian and Charles.
You'd love it. Very, very whimsical and sweet. But yes, I did actually manage to win Celebrity Mastermind.
Did you?
Yes, I did. And I think that I knew that I was in with a shot when he asked me who the name of the camera operator in Withnail and I was like, I think it's Bob Smith. And how that's in there, I've no idea. But I thought, okay, yeah, maybe I've got a shot here.
And would you ever go? I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. But do you fancy a bit of kangaroo penis with Ant and Deck or whatever it is they eat in there?
I mean, so there's two sides to this, because in the past I would have said I'd probably think about it, but when Matt Hancock turned up, I thought, I just think that's not right. I just thought that was if I was in there, I would have found it really hard because
not to punch him.
Well, to conduct myself with decorum, I think. So I'll leave that one there because I don't honestly know. I'd love to do Strictly if they ever ask, but they're never going to ask me. They're going to ask a chef in that slot before they ask me.
Yeah. You like dancing, do you?
Well, I love dancing, but the reason I really want to do it is because my wife Sophie is an amazing dancer and trained all her life. It is genuinely fantastic, and I can never dance with her at parties or weddings in the way that she would love. And I've tried, but I would, this would be the training that would finally, I would love to make Sophie happy. So that's the reason I would do Strictly.
I love that. Talking about Sophie, you've got an amazing family, 2 wonderful kids. How do you get away from wine?
I love wildlife and nature in particular. So I'm a big gardener, and for years I kept bees. I love the idea of pollination. I find it all fascinating, the interlinking of things, the interdependence of beings. It's effortlessly intriguing. I just have an endless curiosity for that. But unfortunately, as the years went by, I realized that I was slowly becoming allergic to bee stings. And in spite of my honey being, I think, the most delicious honey in the world, I had to knock it on the head. So instead, I'm now the patron of the Bumblebee Conservation Trust. So solitary bees, I'm all in favour of, and I've replanted my whole garden to give winter forage for them. And I'd love to help the bees out if I possibly.
Because how often do you get stung by bees if you're making honey?
Well, not that often, but there was one particular hive that was a bit angry, and so angry they managed to sting me through my what was it called, a bee costume? I can't remember what you call it. And I kind of swelled up in some extraordinary places and went and saw the doc, and they took some bloods and then went, yeah, you really got to keep bees, mate.
Well, your honey career is over. whatever.
Yeah, you're so allergic. Yeah. And I was like, oh, am I? I had no idea. But yeah, so that's that. But yeah, Solitary Beast forever.
And what about music? Still part of your life? That's where you started, really, as a kid, right?
It very much is. And, I yearn for the day when Classic FM will ring me up and say, yes, you've got your own show. It's just drinking and talking about music. That'd be incredible. But that's clearly never going to happen. But
I think you'd be brilliant. I'd love you on Classic
that's
FM.
really kind. I mean, I absolutely love, music. So if I could play music a bit more with other people, I'd really like that, because I tend to listen to a lot of music. That music, of course, like wine, is not a solitary pursuit. Yeah. These things are for one another. These are communal enterprises that I think can elevate one and all. And surely that's the name of the game.
Well, I think so. And it's time to get the French horn out, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm up for tootling away anytime.
Okay, brilliant. Ollie, it's been amazing talking to you. And are you going to tell us what the cocktail book's called?
Oh, yes, the Home Cocktail Bible is out at the moment, and there's another one along in the autumn, should you wish it.
And that's going to have a different name.
It will have a different name, something to do with Atlas travel cocktaily stuff. I can't really reveal it, but it will be a global journey in the world of cocktails.
Okay, and send a copy to Liz Truss.
No.
Thank you, it's been great to see you. See you soon, my friend.
Loads of love, buddy. Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.
What a hoot that was, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Next week on Cork Talk, my guest is a distinguished grapevine geneticist, Carol Meredith, known, among other things, for being the person who solved the mystery of Zinfandel. Join me then.
Thanks for listening to Cork Talk. If you want to read more reports, articles and tasting notes by me, go to my website, timatkin.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, @TimAtkin, and on Instagram, @TimAtkinMW. See you next week.